It was the afternoon of November 24, 1971, the day before Thanksgiving in the United States. At Portland International Airport in Oregon, a man dressed in a dark suit, white shirt, black tie, and raincoat approached the counter for Northwest Orient Airlines. He was described as polite, middle-aged, with neatly combed hair, and carrying a black briefcase. He purchased a one-way ticket for Flight 305 to Seattle, Washington, under the name Dan Cooper. Nothing about him drew particular attention. In an era before strict security screening, boarding a flight was quick, simple, and almost anonymous. Cooper blended into the crowd with ease. The plane was a Boeing 727, a short flight of only 30 minutes. The passengers boarded, finding their seats in the small cabin. Cooper took a seat near the rear, ordered a bourbon and soda, and waited. Shortly after takeoff, he handed a folded note to flight attendant Florence Schaffner. She assumed it was a phone number or a casual flirtation and slipped it into her pocket without looking. Cooper leaned toward her and said quietly, "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." Inside the note were clear, precise instructions. Cooper told her he wanted $200,000 in cash, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck ready to refuel the plane in Seattle. He also showed her a glimpse of the briefcase interior, where she saw red sticks and wires arranged in a way that looked like explosives. His tone was calm, without anger or panic. Florence relayed the message to the cockpit. The captain contacted air traffic control, who then informed the FBI. For the next hour, negotiations began while the plane continued towards Seattle. The passengers remained unaware of the situation. Cooper sat back, drank his bourbon, and smoked cigarettes, giving occasional instructions to the crew. His behavior was unsettling in its composure. He was not a man in a rush, nor one making careless mistakes. He seemed to know exactly what he wanted and how to get it. By the time the plane landed in Seattle, the authorities had met his demands. $200,000 in $20 bills, their serial numbers recorded, and 4 parachutes were brought aboard. Cooper allowed the passengers to disembark in exchange for the ransom and the parachutes, keeping only the flight crew on board. The briefcase remained by his side. The mood inside the plane was tense, but strangely orderly. Cooper instructed the pilots to set a course for Mexico City, flying at a low altitude of around 10,000 feet, with the landing gear down, the flaps partially extended, and the cabin unpressurized. He wanted the rear air stairs lowered during flight, an unusual request, but one that the 727 could accommodate. As the plane took off again into the cold night sky, it was raining lightly. The aircraft moved slowly through the dark, heading south. At approximately 8:00 p.m., somewhere over southwestern Washington, the cockpit crew noticed a sudden change in air pressure and a slight movement in the aircraft's tail section. They believed Cooper had opened the rear stairs. The captain made contact with air traffic control, reporting that the hijacker may have jumped. When the plane landed in Reno, Nevada, the rear stairs were still lowered, but Cooper was gone. Along with him were the parachutes and the heavy bag containing $200,000 in cash. The search for Cooper began immediately. The FBI, state police, and military forces scoured the possible landing zone, a vast area of forested wilderness, rivers, and rugged terrain. Weather conditions that night had been poor, with strong winds and freezing temperatures. The combination of the cold, the darkness, and the difficulty of the terrain made the idea of surviving such a jump seem unlikely to many investigators. But there was no body, no parachute, and no clear evidence to confirm whether Cooper had lived or died. The search lasted for weeks, with ground teams and helicopters covering the suspected area. Not a single definitive trace of Cooper was found. The investigation soon became the largest and most exhaustive manhunt in U.S. history at the time. dozens of suspects were considered. The FBI believed Cooper had an unusual knowledge of aircraft and flight paths, given his demands and instructions. The choice of the Boeing 727 was significant, as it was one of the few planes with rear stairs that could be lowered in flight, allowing for a parachute escape. He seemed familiar with the geography of the region and may have had military or skydiving experience. Witness descriptions put his age between 40 and 50, with an average build and no strong regional accent. His manner was polite, even courteous, throughout the hijacking. For years, investigators monitored bank deposits across the country, hoping some of the marked bills from the ransom would surface. In February 1980, a breakthrough came when a young boy named Brian Ingram, vacationing with his family along the Columbia River in Washington, discovered 3 bundles of decayed $20 bills buried in the sand. The bills were confirmed to match the serial numbers from the ransom. The location of the find puzzled investigators. It was miles from the projected landing zone and raised more questions than answers. Some theorized the money had washed downstream from Cooper's landing site. Others believed it was deliberately buried as a decoy. The remainder of the ransom was never found. Over the decades, a number of suspects came under scrutiny. Richard Floyd McCoy, a Vietnam veteran and skilled skydiver, hijacked a plane in 1972 in a strikingly similar fashion and escaped by parachute, only to be caught days later. Some believed McCoy and Cooper were the same man, but differences in appearance and an alibi placed McCoy elsewhere during the 1971 hijacking. Another suspect, Dwayne Weber, allegedly confessed to his wife on his deathbed that he was Cooper. She later claimed to have found old plane tickets and notes in his belongings, but no solid evidence connected him to the crime. Robert Rackstraw, a former paratrooper with a checkered past, was also named by some amateur investigators, but the FBI dismissed him as a suspect. The investigation also produced intriguing forensic details. The clip-on tie Cooper left behind was analyzed decades later, revealing microscopic titanium particles. This finding suggested Cooper may have worked in the aerospace or chemical industries, where such materials were used in manufacturing during the 1960s and 70s. While this clue narrowed the range of possible occupations, it still failed to identify him conclusively. As the years passed, the D.B. Cooper case became a fixture in American folklore. It inspired books, films, songs, and countless theories. The FBI continued to receive tips, some claiming Cooper had survived and was living quietly under a new identity. Others suggested he had died during the jump, and his remains were simply never found. In July 2016, the FBI officially closed the case, citing a lack of new leads. The decision marked the end of official pursuit, but it did nothing to diminish public fascination. Online communities of amateur sleuths remain dedicated to solving the mystery, dissecting flight data, weather patterns, and historical records in search of the truth. To this day, no one knows exactly what became of D.B. Cooper. Did he survive the jump and vanish into a new life, spending his fortune in secret? Did he die in the cold wilderness, his body and the bulk of the money lost to the elements? Was he an experienced skydiver who planned every detail, or a reckless gambler who beat the odds? Without hard evidence, the answers remain locked away with the man himself. His crime was unique, not only for its daring execution, but for the fact that it remains unsolved after more than 50 years. Cooper's composure, precision, and the sheer audacity of leaping into the night with a fortune make his story one of the greatest mysteries in American history. Every retelling of his legend draws more speculation. Every new theory sparks debate, and every unanswered question keeps the memory of that rainy November night alive. Perhaps somewhere, someone knows the truth. Perhaps D.B. Cooper himself, if he survived, lived the rest of his days watching the world wonder, his secret intact until the very end. Until that truth emerges, the mystery will endure, suspended in time like the moment he vanished into the storm, swallowed by the night sky.